Hello, welcome to Life According to Roha, hashtag Roha360. Thanks to everyone who liked my video, and I got a ton of messages of support, and I really appreciate it. This blog is not always going to be about grief. However, this week I call Hell Week because it marks the 1-year anniversary of my son's death. So I am going to be talking about grief tonight, and specifically, I'm not ready to share my story with you yet. That's going to be coming in a later video. I will give you the details. But for tonight, I would like to kind of share with you some support do's and don'ts of what you can do for a grieving parent, how you can support them, and kind of some what to expect for grieving parents, kind of what life looks like afterward. So, first of all, I wanted to go into things that you should not say to grieving parents. First, before I do that, though, I want to say to grieving parents, whenever someone says one of these ridiculously stupid things to you, try as best you can to take it with a grain of salt. It takes a very strong person to do that. Not everyone can survive the loss of a child. When you look at the statistics, the rate of suicide, the rate of drug use, the rate of alcoholism, severe depression, the list goes on. It takes a extremely strong person to be able to overcome this. So if my journey doesn't resonate with you and you think I am never going to do what she's done, you might not, and that's okay. And you might flying colors do even better. So that's kind of goes into my first point is don't compare grief. Don't compare my grief to yours. I only hope you can take the similarities that will be encouraging to you. But don't be too harsh on yourself or your friend that's grieving, sibling that's grieving, brother that's grieving, because the stories don't look the same. Don't compare your grief. Do not compare your grief of losing your grandmother, of losing your neighbor, of losing anyone to someone who has lost a child. Unless you've lost a child and been in their shoes, you don't get it. Comparing the grief is almost adds an insult to injury. Someone who is grieving a child is in an immeasurable amount of pain. I remember when I first felt death enter the room. When I found out my son had passed, I felt like my whole body was lead. Like I was wearing this heavy wool coat. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear and sadness. I wasn't even sure if I was thinking or if I was breathing or even if I was still alive. It was like this heavy weight on my whole body. And that feeling doesn't really ever go away. You learn to live with it. It's like an amputee who loses his legs. He never forgets that his legs were there. You've lost something. Something's been cut off. You're never going to forget what you lost. So, don't compare your grief. I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles here, but don't pretend you understand. I remember when my spouse died, or I remember when my father died. I felt so. You don't get it. I remember when my grandfather died. It was terrible. It was sad. It's not the same. Don't ever say to a grieving parent, everything happens for a reason. And now that's going to be a whole nother video that I'm going to go into how I came to that conclusion on my own. But a grieving parent definitely has to come to that conclusion on their own. They have to figure out on their own why such a horrible tragedy could happen. And they may or may not be able to pull through it. But you telling them everything happens for a reason and it's going to be okay is just going to make them feel worse. This is something they have to process on their own and come to grips with on their own. So I'm looking down at my notes notes here. I took notes because I wanted to make sure I said everything. This is probably the biggest one. It's going to upset me when I say it, so I'm going to smoke, which I quit drinking altogether 6 months ago, and I'm going to quit smoking in a year. So be patient with me. I know it's horrible for me. Nobody needs to comment and tell me it's horrible. Okay, I get it. I get it. I actually started smoking when my son died. So there we go. Be grateful for your living children. I had a relative say to me, well, be grateful for your living children. You still have 3 living children. Imagine if that had been your only child. That would be really sad. It's sad. You don't get it. Do you think that because I have 3 living children, I love my other child any less? No. And so that's, again, I already mentioned this beginning, grieving parents. When people say these ridiculously stupid things to you, be forgiving. These people don't say these things to be malicious or mean. They love you. They're trying to help you. They're idiots. They've never walked through these waters. As best you can, just try to forgive them. Now I want to talk about things you can do for a grieving parent. What a grieving parent needs is love and patience. So if you have a friend, a sibling, a spouse, a neighbor, anyone who's lost a child, that person you know has died. A piece of them has died, and the person you know has died. They are morphing into a completely different person. They're never going to be the same. And so if you can't offer that love and patience, don't fault yourself. You're going to have to get to know your friend all over again. And just like it takes a really strong person to be able to overcome grieving a child, it takes an extremely strong person to be the support network for that friend. It's too much for some people. It's just too much. You're talking about someone who is going to be severely depressed, not want to get out of bed, feel like the whole world is coming to an end. And it might just be too much for you. Your world's going to go on. Theirs has come to a standstill. You have to understand that your grieving friend may not want to be around you because seeing you with your children hurts them. They are happy for you that you have your children, but it reminds them of what they've lost, and it might be too much for them. They may push away from you. In the immediate aftermath, after my son died, I craved knowing other people who had gone through this loss. I didn't want to feel alone. So there's Facebook groups out there where grieving mothers get on there and support each other. I felt that those groups were extremely beneficial at first. I also had several friends that reached out to me that said, hey, I have a friend that has lost a child and they'd be willing to speak with you. Those people were very encouraging. Reach out and find those people. People that had been able to move on isn't the right word, but heal and overcome and find a way to find peace and happiness despite this immense grief were encouraging to me, and that's why I'm doing this vlog. I want to be encouraging to you. I went to some grief groups, which for me personally I found not so helpful. I had gone to this one grief group where I remember there was this woman crying on the floor in fetal position 7 years after her child passed, and I felt like, one, I'm in such immense grief, I can't be a support to that person, and two, I don't want to think that that's where this road ends. I'm not going to accept that that's where I'm going to be in 7 years. So those groups may or may not be beneficial to you. Something that was beneficial to me was reading C.S. Lewis, A Grief Observed. Actually, I would listen to it on an audiobook, and I would take long, long walks. So to grieving parents, I want to say, you've got this wound. It's a gaping, gashing wound. You got to do something to heal it, and you don't want to, but you got to. Read, walk, go on a hike, do something. Every day, do something. Force yourself. Just like you've lost your legs and you don't want to try to learn how to function without them. You don't want to have to go through that struggle, you got to go through the struggle of learning to live your life. Every day, just do something. Take quiet time to sit with yourself, because your answers are there. I had all kinds of questions about God. Who are you? What is existence? What is the meaning of life? What are things? And I found that I wanted to numb those things with alcohol, and that was the wrong decision. I found once I started to sit quiet with my thoughts, the answers were there. The answers were, for me, help other grieving mothers. And I hope that you can find some sort of sense of purpose to be able to do that. Show up. That's the other thing. Show up. If you know that you have the strength to help a grieving parent through and stick with them, keep showing up. Keep calling, even when they push you away. Keep showing up. Keep showing unconditional love. Keep showing up. Keep showing up. I can't say it enough. Keep showing up. They need that. They need that love, patience, and words of encouragement. It doesn't get better, or it gets better. It gets different. Soon those memories of your child become happy memories, but you have to choose to make that choice. Soon you do learn to appreciate your living children even more. The harder and the deeper you fall, the more appreciation you have for life and everyday things. The deeper the cut, the more the joy. I know that's not the silver lining you want to hear. If you've just immediately lost a child, that's not what you want to hear. Unfortunately, it doesn't get better than that. But the joy I feel is more intense than any joy I would have ever even known possible. When you first hold that baby in your arms, you never knew how much you would love them. It's kind of like that. The joy you feel post-acceptance of grief and post-understanding how hurtful life can be is more intense and more joyous than you ever even understood that you thought you could. All right, everyone, I think I've gone on long enough. This video is already carried on 12 minutes. I hope you found this encouraging, and please make comments or ask questions. If there's something specifically you want me to cover on grief, I'd be happy to answer it. If you have some specific questions, if you'd like more resources, therapy. Encourage your friend to go to therapy and get therapy. If the first therapist doesn't work, find another one. Not everybody's a fit, but getting therapy and going on a journey of self-healing is the only way to manage through this. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Please let me know your thoughts. Please give me your comments and let me know how else I can be of support to you. And I hope you found this encouraging. Take care. Bye.